This podcast is brought to you by Always Possible.
alwayspossible.co.uk.
Hurrah, hooray! Yes, it's Possibility Club time. And you're here, and I'm here. Well done. Good. Lovely to be in your good company yet again. It's time to draw back the curtains on the stage and on the story where community and creativity intertwine, where performance meets participation in this episode. In the Possibility Club this week, we're going to be exploring the spaces where creative endeavour becomes a conduit for connection, and where venues or spaces, places like theatres and the arts become heartbeats of the communities they serve. We're going to be delving into the narrative of a guy, a friend of mine, someone I've known for a long time, who believes in the power of the arts to transform, unite and inspire. He's not just an advocate for the stage, he's, I gotta say, a pioneer of inclusivity, creating spaces where every voice has the right to be heard and every story has the chance to be told, embedded within a very particular community. And through his developing leadership, the concept of participation transcends being an audience member or being an actor. It's about being part of a story and a dialogue with some impact. My guest today, he's been at the forefront of reimagining the role of theatres in society, having worked at the Shakespeare's Globe, and now he's head of participation at Southwark Playhouse, orchestrating a symphony of projects that resonate with thousands of people yearly, from all ages and all backgrounds. And his work isn't just about putting on shows, it's about creating a mosaic of experiences that reflects the community that he's working at the heart of, which is Southwark in South London, and its diversity, its challenges, its aspirations. Through strategic development, he's weaving threads of local needs with the aims of his theatre, which is the Southwark Playhouse, securing funding to turn vision into reality and offer tangible opportunities for emerging talents from wherever they come and however they manifest. Collaborations with education institutes like the London College of Communication have been helping to form new narratives on the importance of the arts in fostering community connections. Through projects like the Next Stage magazine, he's looking at how theatre's pivotal role in enriching lives, supporting creative ambitions, can be cross-media, cross-area, and can speak to generations of new artists, new audiences, and local families. So I'm Richard Freeman. This is the Possibility Club, and my lovely guest, good friend of mine, is a champion of creative inclusivity, a catalyst for community engagement, and who knows, a beacon for the future of participatory arts. David Workman. Hello. I'm Richard Freeman. Welcome to another edition of the Possibility Club, where I'm looking at Bravery, people who are rolling their sleeves up and doing interesting things in community, in business and culture. And I'm really delighted to have today a guest who's also an old friend and someone I've collaborated with many moons ago. And it's been a delight to watch his career flourish over the last 18, 20 years or so. It's David Workman, who is from Southwark Playhouse, and we're going to talk all things participation and theatre and community. How the devil are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here and really nice to catch up and see how we're both doing all these years later. When you said it was 20 years the other day, that kind of terrified me slightly.
It may terrify you, David, but I'm still considerably older than you. So take whatever terror is clawing away at your soul and amplify it by 10, and then we may be on the same ground. There'll be lots of people listening that may have heard of Southwark Playhouse. They certainly know Southwark. Also central London, but not really because it's just south of the river, but it's still part of it. I would consider it kind of inner city, sort of urban London. But what they may not have come across, unless you're working within the arts, is the kind of concept of a head of participation, or what does someone whose job role is participation in an arts space or an arts venue, what does that mean? Tell me a little bit about your journey into the heady world of the arts in the 21st century, because it's not an easy place necessarily to cut one's teeth.
No, it's not. And I kind of constantly pinch myself to, see how lucky I am to be doing the job that I'm doing now. I've kind of had a bit of a windy career, but I think really the majority of my career has, over the last kind of 15 years or so, has been in theatre, participatory theatre, or kind of education within theatre buildings in particular, with a bit of an interim where I worked in a school for a couple of years. Quite early on, when I was at school, I did A-level theatre studies, but was never really interested in becoming an actor. There was a teacher of mine who had been a teacher at my school, who then went on to run education work at Bristol Old Vic. I grew up in Bristol. So I was aware there was this kind of thing. There were theatres using drama and theatre as a kind of tool for kind of empowering young people or kind of exploring the world, not just through creating theatre, but through workshops, through kind of other opportunities. So I always thought maybe I wanted to go into education, maybe teaching, maybe that's kind of side of things. But I also love theatre, I also love drama. And this kind of role sort of seemed to kind of combine a bit of both. When I was at university, and when I first met you, I kind of got into the drama society, running workshops at schools. I directed a couple of plays with young people or supported. And obviously we met when we did a slightly insane but incredible tour of schools around central UK, like a TIE tour.
TIE, for the uninitiated, is theatre in education.
Yes. So nowadays there are degree courses, which they kind of call applied theatre, training young people in using kind of drama and theatre as a tool for working with communities in kind of non-professional sectors, particularly Drama School Central do a very, very highly thought after course, but there are other courses across the UK. But I didn't really want to go back into training or studying, various reasons, primarily financial. But I was very lucky to get some work at Shakespeare's Globe. And for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years there, I worked in their education team, particularly their schools team, and ended up running projects for them, working with schools, primarily external to the Globe. So it was kind of going out pan-London, nationally, internationally, running workshops using the Globe's techniques of teaching Shakespeare. But and that's when I worked in the school for a couple of years, again, thinking maybe I'll go into teaching, realize how incredible teachers are.
It's a very quick way to realise that teaching is a terrible idea.
Yeah. Yeah. At that stage, it wasn't quite for me. But when I was at the school, it was a school in Southwark. I realised all my career has been spent in the borough of Southwark, which is kind of totally unintentional because the Globe was in Southwark, this school was in Southwark. And while I was there, I somehow got us involved with a project at Southwark Playhouse. But I've been to see some plays there as an always member. And so we did a really great project with Southwark Playhouse at the time. And through that, I got to know one of my predecessors. This job kind of came up. And I thought, well, I've sort of done this before, I've worked in an arts venue. I've also worked in education. I know the venue. So I applied, and nearly 10 years ago now, I got the job. So I've been here for nearly a decade, which is kind of, I was thinking about this before we came on, before I came on. I still suffer quite regularly from kind of imposter syndrome, thinking, I got here. How did I get here? But actually, I guess I've been doing it for 15 years now, so I feel like maybe I should kind of get over that and kind of go, actually, what I've learned by doing it. Not necessarily through studying it per se, but doing it and kind of getting it right, getting it wrong, learning on the job.
And there's all these kind of big conversations around the role of an arts venue in its community. But you saying, actually, it's something that's adaptive. It's something that you've learned by doing. And actually, for me, that feels more like the right way to approach it. And it's like, it isn't one thing, but actually you just need to keep playing, pushing, evolving. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in my day-to-day work, so whether it be running a young company, working with a school, whatever it might be, I don't give people a list of things if you're running a workshop Southwark Playhouse, you must do X, Y, Z, tick, tick, tick. This is how you do a workshop in an image of Southwark Playhouse. We have an ethos, we have an approach, we have kind of, obviously guidance and guidelines. But I don't feel that there's one approach that works for everything you do. You have to be adaptive. You have to learn. You have to adapt to different communities, different demographics. One size will not fit all. But also, I work with a lot of artists, and I, if I employ someone, I trust they know what they're doing, and actually, I employ them because what they're going to bring to that project is their own approach and their own artistic practice, which will work together to kind of create a project, whatever that might be. I'm not keen on kind of imposing, on a kind of practical side, how that might be. I think it's also about we're based in Elephant and Castle, which is kind of north of the borough, kind of towards the middle, which for for decades has kind of been a bit of a, not just a bit of a joke, but it's been kind of, it was probably the last place in kind of in central zone 1 London that was kind of, or one of the last places that was kind of, has been, the G word, gentrified. And actually the community is changing. There's very little point me not changing how I approach my work. No one has to engage with us. I've got to reach out to them. And I learned that again quite early on, and I was trying to run some workshops to the community, open workshops, come into and got quite limited take up, despite, me thinking I'd done quite a good job on the marketing. The minute I went out and ran a workshop in a community space, and it's this same as now, it sounds quite naive, but it's kind of, you kind of think, I've got a building. I want people to come to the door. I want that to happen. I want people to come to our door and feel welcome through our door. But it takes a while to achieve that. So the minute we went out and ran a workshop in a community space, we had lots more people come along. So we went into their territory and their home, and we're saying we want to be part of this community. It's an ongoing process, really. And I never claim to know exactly what it is, but yeah, you have to adapt
and that community knowledge and understanding, it takes time, it takes experimenting, it takes lots of listening, and we know that the arts is a really good vehicle for being able to do that, just like sport is, and I often think they're two sides of the same coin, but they are ways in which you can find shared languages, common languages, even if lived experience is different.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit about Southwark, and you said, that's sort of where most of your career has developed. In fact, last week I walked from London Bridge right down to the corner of Peckham Rye. I went through Camberwell, Woolworth, but actually it was a real thrill to kind of explore the borough a little bit, because it's not one I know that well, but listeners will know areas like Peckham, Rotherhithe, Bermondsey, but also, as you've pointed out, the huge cultural capital within the borough. You've got the Globe, you've got Tate Modern, you've got the whole kind of Bankside developments and the Imperial War Museum and so on. But so you've got a real mix of areas that have been the poorest in London with areas that are, some of the most expensive real estate in the world. But it's a changing and evolving borough full of all sorts of different communities. So how does the Playhouse and in your role, how do you get under the skin of that?
So I haven't got the demographics to hand, but certainly some of the wards within Woolworth, which is quite close to us, were some of the poorest in London, if not the UK, at the time of the most recent kind of census. But then that's slap bang up against brand new developments, even here in Elephant and Castle, huge shiny new tower blocks, which no idea how many of them are full. It feels much more on top of each other. You can walk 5 minutes and be in Dulwich, or you can be in Peckham, and again, those are both changing places, but it seems much more on top of each other. For me, it's about knowing what we can bring as a venue, as a space, what we can offer, but also where our strengths lie. I think it's also about. It took a long time for me to identify particular groups to reach out to for particular projects, or if we're trying to. So we're trying to recruit young people to our youth theatre, which is free to take part in. We want to make sure that reaching out to young people who might not know about it or otherwise be able to take part in. So we really work closely with community groups and schools to do that. But that involves building up relationships and building up trust with groups, whether they be community groups, they be teachers, whether they be other spaces within the borough. It's also knowing where our strengths lie. So I also partner with charities who are doing great work in the borough, but maybe haven't got space to run their projects. Just last year, we opened a second venue. So we now have 2 venues in Elephant and Castle. And within our new venue, we have a dedicated participation space, which is kind of all of my work. But realistically, I'm not going to be able to fill that space 24/7 with all the work I do. But I want to make that space usable. So we're partnering with charities or groups who are working with refugees, with adults with dementia, young people who are kind of at risk of exclusion, who are really doing great work, which there's no point of trying to replicate. I don't want to kind of be, there's great work already happening. I'd rather support that and amplify that within the community, rather than try to muscle in it and say, well, we're the big theatre in Elephant and Castle, we should have a piece of this pie. For me, it's very much collaboration and partnership. This is what we have. what can we give to you? How can that be mutually beneficial? And that really is, because then we can say to a funder, say, oh, we're supporting these projects. Parents will come in, partners will come in to pick up their child or whatever. And at that point, we can then say, oh, great. We have these shows, we have these projects. It's a way of kind of softly building those relationships with the community, really.
This podcast is brought to you by Always Possible. But who are we?
Always Possible works with ambitious businesses, charities and public services that are thinking about what's next.
From architects to aerospace companies, puppet theatres to primary schools, business networks to big data analysts.
If you're wanting to be brave with some big decisions or to be clearer about what to prioritise, then an award-winning workshop from the Always Possible team is a brilliant starting point.
We care about just one thing: building ideas that work.
For creative, intuitive and practical expertise, consider Always Possible as your strategic partner.
Find out more about how we could power up your mission. Visit alwayspossible.co.uk.
alwayspossible.co.uk.
This city.
This is a quick note to say that the Brighton Paradox will be back. Season 2 will be a shorter, tighter series looking at the energy, impatience and opportunity happening in post-pandemic Brighton and Hove. We're examining the landscape across the city in 2024, what's changing, what's building in economics, culture, community and technology. Why are people telling me that they are in fight or flight mode? What is the significance of a council with an overall majority? How is artificial intelligence maybe changing the way people solve problems in the city? And of course, how has a podcast changed the lives of Brighton's children? And it's not this one. All new interviewees and all new explorations of the city. But right now we're still gluing the jigsaw together, so you'll have to wait a little bit longer. But we are delighted to announce that we're being supported again by Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club, who return as brilliant headline sponsors and partners. And the University of Brighton's Help to Grow management programme also returns as a really valuable project partner. And in addition, we have 2 new supporters, the exceptional folk at EQ Investors and the legends at Midnight Communications, and we couldn't do this without all of these visionary people. Brilliant. Thank you. Take care. Speak soon.
It feels, and it's been a long time since I've had a kind of professional role in performing arts, but it feels like outside of the kind of the money in the West End or whatever, it's been a really, really tough decade for regional and community and smaller venues to thrive, and with probably dwindling audiences who are now, with all the streaming channels, they've got a million things they can watch. There's a kind of culture of high quality telly and stuff like that. So and frankly can't afford to spend 40 quid on a theatre ticket. But that can't only be the narrative. What's the sort of the world around the Playhouse and your audiences, alongside the community development work that's happening?
I mean, yeah, it is a really tough time. And as a venue, we've kind of got a bit of an interesting model. So we're not funded by the Arts Council or by any statutory funding, and we never have been. So we had our 30th birthday last year. So we've kind of sustained that and kind of grown over 30 years, which I think is kind of testament to our CEO, who's been here for quite a long time, and our director. But our model is interesting. In a year, we will kind of stage between 25 and 30 shows. We have space of different size. So what that means is we have shows that can do really well in our bigger space. So our most recent show in our new venue was a kind of sold out the most of the end of its run. That means that we then have kind of a bit of back up to then go, oh great, well now we can kind of take a bit more of a risk in our studio space, and maybe provide someone who's early stage career. We can be a bit more flexible and kind of go, give someone a bit more support. Might try something that might not get the largest audience, but it will get interesting. It will be an interesting piece of theatre to create. I guess that's an ongoing for us as an organisation. It's kind of trying to get that balance right of kind of stuff that will be kind of commercially successful or financially successful rather, or we'll find a large audience, and or then we know that will help sustain stuff that maybe struggles to find an audience, but it's still interesting work to make. Yeah, so we're quite lucky in that sense, and something might catch word of mouth. So, for example, there's a show which you might have heard of called Operation Mincemeat, which is now in the West End, and it didn't originate here, but it originated at another venue called New Diorama Theatre, and then it moved to Southwark Playhouse and had 3 or 4 runs pre and post pandemic, and was a word of mouth kind of smash, and has now been running in the West End for at least a year. I think it's running for another year or so.
And that's broken the record for like 5-star reviews or something.
Yeah, and also that's kind of an outlier. You know, when that happens, it kind of proves the rule that actually, by taking a punt on something, we're not actually searching for the next Operation Mincemeat. That would be a fool's errand. But you know, with 3 venues, 3 theatre spaces rather, we can program a range of things. Hopefully, all of them will find launch of some kind. But yeah, I think certainly, it's interesting. So the Arts Council are, and I think rightly, focus more on supporting venues, particularly outside of London. So I think actually that gives a bit of flexibility by not kind of receiving that funding, ironically, by not having a large amount of money from the Arts Council, gives us as a venue a bit more flexibility to obviously we're also a bit more risk if we have have 6 months of poor audiences, but touch wood, we get the balance right generally.
It's really exciting that can still happen, especially in this sort of current climate, because you look at the West End listings and some of the things seem interesting, but there is a kind of a deep furrow of certain types of show that get rehashed time and time again.
And
it's still
famous names, Carl.
The start vehicle, yeah. Seeing Sarah Snook, who I adore, doing Picture of Dorian Gray, but you're like, okay, but it's an old story and it's a one-woman show because they've put all the money into her because she's a big name, and it's like, but then you see something like Operation Mincemeat, you go, right, it's not a big star vehicle. It's got a big car. There's lots of people involved in that who will be employed. It's not a story that everybody knows, but it's gestated in spaces like yours. It's had time to be workshopped, to get really funny, develop itself.
Yeah.
I love that there's still room.
This is slightly off, but we're as a venue, and myself and my boss, we're actively in the process of kind of putting together a plan for how can we provide more space for emerging artists, whatever stage it might be, whether they're looking for a space to just write something or to workshop something, or to kind of, what can we provide that's kind of affordable spaces at a premium in London? Can we provide space that is affordable or free to the young artists, hoping that they might go on and create a piece of work wherever that might be.
How do you tangibly see the impact of your work? Now, there are going to be communities you get to know, you'll see the day-to-day experiences that people are having, but over the long term, and you've been there a decade now, as you said, can you tangibly record the kind of the social mobility where someone has come to you that's never really had the means to go and spend a lot of time in the theatre, but something has lit a bit of a spark, and that has then carried through, and now they are thriving with the opportunity, with the confidence, with the network, with what your space has been able to provide. I'm not saying this because I'm leading it. I don't know that maybe this is too clankingly obvious a thing, but how and where do you see those kind of things happening to know then where to put attention and resources in the future?
I guess primarily that comes through anecdotally or kind of qualitatively. We do kind of, we survey our participants, whether it be young company or older people who we work with, and ask them to kind of assess their kind of experience with us. But since qualitative, it's always kind of seeing a young person go through that process. I always kind of bring it back to my colleague he's now our technical manager, but well before I worked here, he went to a school around the corner from the Playhouse, did a workshop with the school, was a founder member of our young company. When he was at school. The Playhouse sponsored to do an apprenticeship in technical theatre, which he kind of discovered a love of during his time in the young company. And he now runs our technical department here at the theatre.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Those things are big testaments to that.
The young people who come through our young company and then go on to drama school and, get a job maybe in the industry, but also, so some of those founder members of our young company are now work in the industry themselves or have done, or a young person finds interest in something else. So a young person who I first met him when he came to do work experience with us, and he spent 3 days on his phone in the corner of the office. And that kind of nothing out of the unusual there. But he then joined our young company, and by the time he left, he was designing our posters for the last young company show we did, and is now studying graphic design and is kind of doing great work in graphic design. We don't just kind of go to you're going to come and do some drama, some acting. If a young person is just interested in technical theatre or graphic design or sound design or whatever, if we can support that or can direct them to where they can do, whether courses they can do, we'll do that. Again, I'm not pressed about where a young person does that. If we can direct us to the right place to where they can develop their passions in a way that they can't quite in terms of our capacity, we'll do that. Organisation wise, I think it's always gratifying when I'll talk to another organisation and they might say to me, "Oh yeah, so-and-so told me about the Playhouse or told me about the participation work. Oh, you mean to get in touch?" Or I wanted to kind of find out more. And that's always gratifying because it means that people want to at least pass on the word about us and about what we're doing. For me, I think I want to make myself and the organisation kind of be a place where people can feel they can approach us. They can come and ask me things, and then they're not going to get turned down just because they've come to me on a whim and asked something. I'd much rather say yes than no.
For people who don't feel that they've got that cultural capital to be able to navigate the world, I think for all the perceived and expected openness of the arts and the cultural sector, it can be an incredibly closed and kind of exclusive shop if you're not very well connected. And so that's why I think regional venues like yours or smaller venues within London that are kind of part of a wider constellation where people can, as you say, just come and approach with an idea, with a thought. We've worked with an amazing array of venues like the Little Angel Puppet Theatre in Angels, one of my favourites. Absolutely tiny space, it's a small team, but a real hotbed of sort of creativity and thinking. That can be massively empowering.
It's that having that first positive response, and it's kind of as long as I can, whether we can, whether I'm in the right place for that or whatever, or whether if we can support them or if we can direct them to somewhere else, there might be a better approach, or if we haven't got the capacity to do something, but let's have a chat, have a coffee, maybe there's another way we can do it. My team is myself and a part-time colleague, and then lots of freelancers. So we can be quite responsive in that sense.
And what's the future hold? You said you've got a second space in Elephant and Castle. There's a kind of independence within how the venues run, so maybe you're not sort of tied to as many of the financial and political ramifications that I find so many organisations kind of feel at the whim of. So whilst that may present challenges, it also gives you an opportunity and some autonomy. It feels we're in an interesting time of flux at the moment, culturally, socially, politically. I think there will be a renaissance in the creative industries coming over the next few years. We've stripped it right back to a point where it's almost unsustainable, yet, any serious new government needs to recognise and amplify the sheer power of our creative sector, both as an economic force, but also as a force for social mobility and for innovation. But I'm interested, what are you excited about? What is there that's on the horizon for yourself, for the Playhouse, and for maybe the kind of theatre world more generally?
I'm probably maybe a glass half full kind of person, or certainly like not all the time, but I think I approach things with a kind of let's see what happens kind of approach. So we've got 2 venues now. Our new venue is our home. So we've always been in rented venues or hired venues, which we kind of adapt. So our new venue is ours for 100 years or however long the lease is. But yeah, we've got it for 100 years. We're part of a new development, so we're part of one of the new tower blocks at Woodland Castle. Our other venue we're still renting that. There's still negotiations about what will happen for the future. But I think we've at least got one space permanently, and we'll always have a base in Southwark, and there are other ongoing discussion negotiations about what might happen in the future. In that sense, that after 30 years, we open our permanent home. 30 years after we opened our first our first venue in a warehouse in Southwark. So we're kind of come to a position of having a space we can call our own finally. For myself, last year actually was a very tough year financially. So as I said, I do all the fundraising as well for all of my work, and the first half of the year was kind of a drought of, and I thought, oh, this is it. This is what it's like when things kind of finally dry up. But things have kind of turned a bit of a corner towards the end of the year, and I've got some exciting projects coming up, looking to kind of develop a piece for performing, taking into primary schools, like a piece of professional theatre. So I've been doing some work around that. Looking to expand our work with young people extracurricularly, so working with young people, but also looking to work with post-18 young people as well, trying to run a kind of a training program. I think there's always going to be a need and desire for live art and live connection, but it's interesting. Yeah, post-pandemic, it took a long time for that to kind of come back, and I think it's still doing that. People are, like you said earlier, people are still, they have to weigh up justifying the cost of coming into London, seeing a show. You're less likely to take a punt on something nowadays, which is totally right. So that's I think to still kind of to settle down, I think. But I think there's lots going on. There are a lot of exciting voices coming through, and a lot of exciting kind of discussion being had about how we support those new emerging voices. Whether those discussions reach that kind of the top of the pyramid, your major venues, that we'll see. But I think certainly in terms of kind of people feeling empowered to kind of to raise their voice and have their voice heard within the arts is there's a long way to go. But I think diversifying the industry is working. We have a group of black writers who we're supporting. But again, there are lots of people within that who are doing their own work, so that they're networking within our collective and trying to create their own projects. And it's also about supporting them, supporting that. I can't speak for the kind of regions. I guess I've never really worked regionally, but that's possibly where you might feel a bit more worried. There's obviously amazing work going on, but yeah, financially as budgets have been slashed. So my work, working with secondary schools, starting this career in 2009, about a year before arts education was comprehensively kind of taken off the curriculum, or supported by the government. Probably wasn't the greatest move professionally, but there are still great teachers who will support working with arts organisations. But it's only got harder, particularly secondary education, where the focus is much more on results and academia. Primary schools are a bit more open. They have a bit more kind of capacity to kind of to do stuff. But I think that's young people who haven't, I know, who are coming out of the pandemic as well, who haven't quite had that understanding of how to engage with the arts, or haven't had that kind of often the first step is through school. That's a bit of a worry. We actually try and kind of reach out to schools and young people.
Every single employer or business, whether it's in engineering or construction or tourism or finance or tech or whatever, always it comes back to they need a pipeline of young adults and young people who are good communicators, who are good problem solvers, who are resilient, who know how to think on their feet, who know how to tell stories and understand their role within a system, who know how to articulate good ideas, who can present, who can facilitate, who can answer the phone. You have to develop over time through the experiences and the interactions that you have. My entire career and now my professional life as an entrepreneur and as a facilitator and as a consultant has all been down to the opportunities I had to perform, to write, to collaborate, to devise things, to be part of a group of people experimenting, playing around with stories as a young person, and I didn't come from money. I didn't come from the cultural capital. There was no obvious pathway for me. But it was my mum putting me in participatory drama projects like you run.
I say it with our youth theatres, but actually, so we work with older adults as well. And you have someone come who's 75, hasn't done drama for 60 years. It's kind of equally as kind of valid, if not more so, that actually, if a young person wants to become an actor and go to drama school, I will facilitate that as far as we're possible as an organisation. But I'm not here to create young actors. I'm here to create a safe space for young people, whatever their background, whatever their experience, whatever their interest.
We don't need more actors. We need more actors from different backgrounds. But what we do need is better communicators, better storytellers, more confident people that can go into any walk of life and be able to hold an audience, put their arm around a room of people, say, do you know what? No matter how we're all feeling, we've got this. That does not come from the sort of hothousing that schools do to get people through exams. It comes from the experiences that you provide. It's so important that we don't lose it. So all power to you for putting your soul and heart and energy into it and developing it. And Southwark will be thanking you for it, even if it doesn't always feel like it, I'm sure.
Thank you. Well, I think it's been great to kind of articulate it. You know, that's always nice to kind of be able to kind of try, hopefully vaguely kind of articulately.
David Workman, thank you for being my guest today on the Possibility Club.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Possibility Club Practical Bravery. If you enjoyed this episode, do like, share, review, tell everybody about it. Look in the show notes for all the details of today's guest, stuff we talked about, stuff that's of interest, new things to read, new things to listen to. And if you are running a business or a charity and you are trying to accelerate or improve the impact that you have in the world, if you want to be famous for what you do and what you change rather than just what you sell, then talk to us. alwayspossible.co.uk. We want to hear from you, we want to talk to you, we want to amplify and elevate your ideas, and who knows, we might be able to help you feel more confident and clear about what's next. alwayspossible.co.uk. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with a new special guest and a new insight on practical bravery in action.
The Possibility Club is an Always Possible podcast. The interviewer was Richard Freeman for Always Possible, and the producer and editor was me, Chris Thorpe Tracy, for Lo-Fi Arts. Have a good week.
alwayspossible.co.uk.
Lo-Fi Arts.